Hi, we're here today with John Dawes. He's Executive Director of the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds. John, it's good of you to set aside some time to discuss what is actually going to be a very critical issue for Pennsylvania.
A- Absolutely. I'm glad to be here and to be a spokesman for the citizens who worked so hard on the reauthorization of the Abandoned Mine Lands Fund in 2006.
John, give me a little intro first on what the foundation does and what it's involved in, and then we can go to the issue of federal mine reclamation funding, which is really absolutely critical because Pennsylvania's number one water quality problem is drainage from its many thousands of acres of abandoned mines. But first, tell me a little bit about the foundation and sort of how you got involved in this mine reclamation funding issue, if you can.
Well, we were set up 19 years ago, founded by the Heinz Endowments out of Pittsburgh, and the major foundations in Pennsylvania, William Penn, R.K. Mellon, the Colcom, those with an environmental interest are now funding us, as well as a small endowment. And because of just what you mentioned, the fact that AMD, acid mine drainage, is the number one water quality problem, about 57% of our budget goes toward those types of projects, either acid mine drainage abatement or the planting and restoration of abandoned mine lands. The premise upon which we were founded is that the small grants program would leverage agency dollars, meaning EPA, the Office of Surface Mining, Department of Environmental Protection, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And so every grant that we make must do so. And I suppose that one of our best examples of projects is something that you were involved in when you were secretary, was the Mather coal pile down in that town in Greene County, where the municipality was unable to raise about $15,000 for an engineering study so as to leverage and bring in the Office of Surface Mining for coal pile refuse cleanup, which has now been accomplished, and a coal pile that was on fire is now a benefit, a park, and a graded area with ecosystem function in that municipality. So that's just an example of the kind of grants we make and the work that we do.
Well, and I remember that pile. I mean, that's like a lot of piles, but that one was huge and it towered over the town at one point.
100 acres.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely great work. Um, Sort of fast forward a little bit to the issue of that we're worried about today, which is an amendment that was added. I guess, John, you said in the dark of night to a federal transportation bill in July by U.S. Senator Max Baucus from Montana. Can you tell us how that all got started, what the impact's going to be in Pennsylvania?
Well, we do not know the origin of his action, except that it seems as if it was against Wyoming. Wyoming receiving an enormous amount of the collected fees, and they are a certified state. The amendment capped certified states at $15 million. And in terms of the payout, Wyoming was to receive much more money than that.
Well, I guess the fee you're talking about is what, a 35 cent per ton fee the feds put on all coal that's mined these days, and it goes into a fund to reclaim abandoned mines and take care of safety issues from leftover old mines. Is that right?
Correct. That's exactly right, except that after 5 years, the fee was reduced to 32 cents a ton, and it is collected nationally and then distributed to the states through mandatory spending, which was a new provision in the 2006 reauthorization. Prior to that, our work as a foundation included going to D.C., talking to members of the Appropriations Committee to get more money for Pennsylvania, meaning $22 million instead of $21 million. And now the payout schedule is such that Pennsylvania uh, receives $59 million in 2012 for reclamation. So with mandatory spending, that was the key. That was the key provision that we argued for and actually achieved. So this amendment is a big change in the reconfiguration and distribution of the collected fees that are in fact being collected from the coal industry. So it's a self-funded program, and it doesn't make sense that in tight times that we should be messing with self-funded programs that lead to quality of life issues in very stressed areas.
Well, right now in Pennsylvania, how many? What's the size of the abandoned mine lands problem? Can you give us a thumbnail?
Is well over 200,000 acres. Some estimates, and we did pay for an inventory some time ago, probably 10 years ago, that it was 250,000 acres. Now, an awful lot of work has been achieved since then, so I would say that the best guesstimate would be well over 200,000 acres of dead, toxic land producing acid mine drainage every time it rains. Now, I have an agricultural background, and anyone who is involved in agriculture, the idea of that much land being toxic and polluting, not producing agricultural products or not providing any kind of ecosystem function, is just an offense.
Well, I think there's also somewhere between 4 and 5,000 miles of rivers and streams in the state that are severely impacted by acid mine drainage as well. So, I mean, the problem is absolutely huge. And like we said, it's really the number one water quality problem in Pennsylvania. So, so given what was done in July, where do we stand now with this issue?
Well, there are some opportunities. There is a House bill, H.R. 6113, and a Senate bill that is the same wording, S 3514, that would reverse and reset the clock on this very, very bad amendment. And actually, Senator Baucus, who has no jurisdiction over AML and consulted with no one during this process, has stated to a writer that he would like to reverse what he did. And so he's on record with a journalist for saying that. So I think that there is an opportunity to reset the clock and pull this amendment through those two bills, the House bill and the Senate bill. The Senate bill, Senator Casey has signed on. Senator Toomey's office, as of yesterday, is fully aware of this and said that they are working on it. I've had a meeting with Congressman Schuster, my congressman, and he and his staff made the commitment verbally that they would sign on and get active with it. Because if our delegation is not active, then they'll lose their opportunity to determine the outcome and what the fix should be. We, as the Pennsylvania AML campaign, the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds, citizens in Pennsylvania, I don't know that we've got much to comment on in terms of Wyoming's use of the fund. And I think that our legislators, our elected officials, can certainly work on that next year when they come back in session. But I think the important thing right now is to get those two bills passed.
What do you think realistically Congress can do that with the time they have remaining? I mean, sort of what is your timeline at this point?
I think that they should do it during the lame duck session. That's how the SMACRA, Surface Mine Control Reclamation Act amendments were passed with a larger bill. It was the Tax Relief and Health Care Act. And certainly they have the opportunity to do it. It just takes the political will and the desire to protect Pennsylvania, which they need to do.
Yeah, it was sort of ironic that this all came about in, I think is it the 35th anniversary of the federal surface mining law was this year. I think you were at some ceremonies in Washington about that.
Right. It's been such a well used program by citizens, and we have a very, very good leader in Joe Pizarchek, director of the Office of Surface Mining. And he has an excellent staff that pays attention to permitting so that permits are adhered to, and we have a good permitting system in the state of Pennsylvania. He's very concerned and interested in reclamation, in addressing those high priority sites that are priority ones and twos that are dangerous high walls and mine openings, resulting in more deaths on mine lands than takes place in underground mining accidents. It's that has been the case for 25 years that they have been tracking that. And so Joe is very committed to it, and I think we're fortunate to have a leader like him. He gave an excellent speech restating his commitment on the grounds of the Department of Interior last month on that 35th anniversary.
Well, Joe should know all about abandoned mines and reclamation because he came from Pennsylvania. So that's a little bit of a inside track there, perhaps.
You know,
Anything else you want to add? Is there anything that groups and others might be able to do to help motivate our congressional delegation to action?
well, we had unanimous support for the reauthorization in 2006, and I would encourage members of watershed associations and citizens and municipalities to contact their congressmen and our two senators and make sure that they are active on this issue and signatories to the bills and getting it through Congress.
And information on that is at your website, I would imagine.
That's correct.
Okay, great. And that's www.pennsylvaniawatersheds.org.
Yes.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to add on this issue? I mean, it's absolutely critical to Pennsylvania because, as was mentioned, over the next 10 years, if this is not changed, Pennsylvania's abandoned mine reclamation funding could be decreased by $200 million or more. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, through your work as secretary, you know the citizens who are engaged in watershed restoration. You know many of them personally, and
Sure.
it's an army of volunteers and good citizens, actually thoughtful voting citizens that are determined to make a change in their quality of life in their communities. So I think it's very important that we secure for them the funds that allow them to complete their work.
I absolutely agree, John, because in my travels, when I was secretary, I was fortunate enough to be able to get to every single county in Pennsylvania, all 67, at least twice in my tenure. And I've seen what can be done through these local partnerships of businesses, volunteers, the state, the federal program. You know, to see streams that were polluted for 125 years restored is
Right.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is remarkable being brought back to ecosystem function, and that's what we have set out to do, and hope that that will be the end result for the entire state of Pennsylvania.
Well, that's great, John. John, thanks again for taking a little bit of time here to brief us on this critical issue and continue your good work.
Thank you very much.